my head.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Anything?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You are aware that that there was substantial media coverage in relation to your investigation.
Yes.
That included a very lengthy article in the Deseret News.
Yes.
Nancy
Objection,
Grace.
relevance. I don't believe a 10-year-old's reading the Deseret News.
I need to know what's out there. Overruled. So a Deseret News article. Go ahead.
Multiple articles in the Deseret News, correct?
That would be accurate.
And then on December 4th of 2010, there was a 20-page article about the case.
You know, I don't have them all in my head, so, but I know there were articles.
On December 7th of 2010, Nancy Grace.
I never saw it, so I don't.
You've heard about it, though.
I heard that Nancy Grace was involved, but I don't know what she said. I've never saw it.
February of 2011, 2020 did a special.
They did.
And you participated in that.
I did.
And they interviewed you, filmed you.
That would be accurate.
Since then, there's been numerous other media reports about the case as well, correct?
I assume so. I haven't been following the media.
That's all the questions.
Do you have any follow-up?
Briefly, Judge.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Robinson, are you aware of whether or not Hayden MacNeill, the child witness in question, observed the media?
I know what her caregiver has told me, but I don't know
What's that?
personally that she has kept her from the media, period.
What was the purpose of going to the media during the investigation?
We were hoping that we could open up some new leads
Did it
in the
work?
case. We got new information, but I don't know that it actually helped us get the new leads we were looking for. That was just a matter of just continuing working.
New information came in as a result, though?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Next.
Alexis Summers, she's on the fourth floor, Your Honor. It might take us just a minute to get her.
Okay, let's get her down here.
I think we submitted X after Your Honor received all the documents. We just want to make sure that X is received as well.
No objection.
X will be received. Ms. Summers, if you'll come forward here to the clerk's desk, please raise your right hand and take an oath.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the case now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Thank you. Please be seated here and respond to counsel's questions.
Morning.
Good morning.
Please give us your name and spell your last name.
Okay, Alexis Michele Summers, last name Somers.
Thank you for being here this morning. Few questions about your interactions with Doug Whitney and Jeff Robinson and also Ada.
Okay.
Do you know who Doug Whitney is?
I do.
And who is Doug?
He's an investigator.
Okay. So he assigned to the case that we're here on today?
Yes.
What about Jeff Robinson? Who's Jeff Robinson?
He's also an investigator assigned to the case.
Okay. And Ada. Tell us who Ada is.
She's my little sister.
Okay. Can you describe your relationship, biological relationship, but also legal relationship with Ada?
Okay. Yeah, Ada was Vanessa, my older sister's daughter. My parents adopted her shortly after she was born.
Okay.
Currently, well, for the past almost 7 years, I've been her legal guardian.
Okay. When did you become her legal guardian?
I don't know the
Approximately.
exact date, but probably 7 to 8 months after my mother's death is when I won custody of her and my other sisters.
Okay. Did you have physical custody of her prior to that?
I did. I did.
When was that in relationship to your mom's?
The summer of 2007.
Okay. And we're
So
talking,
just a couple months after my mom's death.
we're talking about April 11th, 2007 being your mom's death?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you living when you first gained physical custody of Ada?
I was living in Henderson, Nevada.
Okay. Can you tell us how old Ada is right now?
She's 12 years old.
12 years old. Do you know how old she was when your mom passed away?
Yes, she was 6 years old.
6 years old? Okay. Are you aware of an interview that she gave at the Children's Justice Center sometime later after your mom's death?
Yes.
Do you know when that occurred, approximately?
I believe it was sometime in 2008. I'm not quite sure. I know I did drive her up there with my other sisters as well from Nevada to be interviewed.
Okay. So you were living in Nevada with Ada?
Yes, I was going to medical school down there.
Okay. Do you know how old she was when she gave that interview?
I'm not 100%. I mean, if we have the date of the interview, I'd be able to tell, but
You stipulate to September 9th, 2008 as the date of the CJC interview?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. Would that have put her at age 7?
she would have been 7.
She was 7 years old when she was first interviewed?
Yes.
Okay, by law enforcement about this.
Yes.
Have you ever talked with Ada about what she observed on April 11th, 2007?
I have.
Do you recall, and I know this is a tough question, but do you recall the first time you ever talked with Ada about it?
I don't off the top of my head. I know she'd brought up things throughout the years, just, talking about the day that she found my mother.
Okay, so on occasion she would bring things up.
Yes.
When she would, how would you respond? What would you do?
I would listen to her.
Did you respond with questions sometimes?
Sometimes I would, yeah.
And what kinds of questions would you ask her?
Like, what happened that day? How did you find Mom?
Okay. Do you recall, do you know the difference between an open-ended question and a leading question?
Yes,
Just to expedite this a little bit, a leading question is a question that contains the answer within the question,
Okay, yeah.
normally requiring a yes or no answer. Not all yes and no answers, or yes and no questions contain the answer in the question, but a leading question contains the answer in the question. With that background or that foundation on questioning, did you take an approach when you would talk to Ada or ask her questions?
When I asked her questions, it would be very general questions, open-ended type questions. And a lot of it was me just listening to her talk, different times throughout the years when she kind of just sometimes just randomly brought this up.
Okay. Did you avoid suggesting answers to her when you would ask questions?
I did.
I'm sorry, will you avoid leading? I'd like you to know what she did. Thank you.
Can you provide the court with an example? Well, I mean, you've given some examples of questions you would ask. Any other examples of how you would phrase a question?
Oh, just mostly, just trying, I can't think of really a specific question that I had asked her.
Okay. Let me, I think I...
More just, what happened that day.
Okay. Did you, you interacted with Doug Whitney and Jeff Robinson throughout the investigation of
Yes.
this case?
Mm-hmm.
Did they at times come to you with specific questions about the case,
Yes.
about the facts of the case?
Uh-huh.
Did some of those questions relate to Ada's observations?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall being asked a question through an email by Mr. Whitney that asking you to follow up on how close Ada got to the tub?
Yeah, I do.
Remember
I do
that?
recall that.
Do you have a recollection? Did you follow up with Ada on that question?
I believe I did, yeah.
You mentioned that you believe you did, but if you can, do you recall how you followed up, what you asked Ada?
Pretty sure I just asked her, how close were you? How close did you get to the tub on that day?
Okay. Similarly, do you recall being asked a question by investigators about how much water Ada observed in the bathtub? Do you remember being asked to follow up on that issue at all?
I believe I was asked that, and
Do you recall if you followed up with Ada?
yeah, when I talked to her about that, she said, "You want me to tell her what she said?"
Do you remember what you asked her
Oh,
before you get to what she said?
and I just asked her exactly what I was asked to ask her, how much water was in the tub.
Okay. Turning to the media, there's been a substantial amount of media in this case, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware of when that started and what the medium was, newspaper or television? What do you recall about that?
I think it started around 2009 when there became more of an active investigation, or things were changing with the investigation. We had done some interviews, I think initially newspaper interviews, and then there were some television interviews.
Do you remember what those newspaper outlets were, those agencies were?
Started out with local agencies, like the Deseret News and Daily Herald type.
And are you aware that they covered the story, the investigation?
Yes, I'm aware that they did.
What about the television media? What outlets covered the investigation, the story?
Well, most of the local news stations, as well as ABC with 2020 did a piece on the story,
Okay.
on the case.
Nancy Grace as well?
Yes, she did.
But there were various news outlets that ran the story.
Throughout the years.
During this time period when the media started to become more interested, where were you living and where was Ada living?
Initially, when the 2020 was interested in ABC doing the story, we were still in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas.
What about when the special was broadcast? Do you know, where were you living at that
I
time?
was living in South Jordan, Utah at that time.
And Ada's been living with you ever since?
She has. She's always lived with me.
Ada lives with you presently?
She does.
Okay. Did you take any measures with respect to Ada viewing media in this case?
Oh, always. I never have allowed her to be interviewed. I've never allowed her to watch any of the media, television, newspaper things. I've always been very strict with that.
And why is that?
Because I was concerned that I didn't want to make sure that she was tainted in any way. I knew that if this case came to trial, that she would be a potential witness, and I knew the importance of, not exposing her to that. And then also, she's a little girl. She shouldn't have to see all of these things that have happened as well. I'm trying to protect her from that.
Okay. How would you describe your investment in the investigation and the prosecution of this case?
It's been substantial. Yeah, ever since the day my mom died, I was concerned that my father killed her. And I've been fighting to get justice for this case ever since then.
Have you ever expressed that directly to Ada
About
your belief?
my father and what he did.
Sure.
I don't remember ever expressing that directly to her.
Do you know whether or not she knows specifically what you believe in this case?
I think I know she knows. Well, I don't know specifically, but I know she's aware that I think my dad killed my mom.
How does she know that?
That's just what well, I guess maybe you should ask her. Maybe she's not aware of that.
Is it your belief that she knows, though?
I think she knows, and you know, I don't know if it's just because I've had my other two sisters as well, Elle and Sabrina, that, you know, they're aware, they're more aware of what's going on, and I don't know if
How old
That was
is Elle and how old is Sabrina?
Elle is now 20 and Sabrina is 19.
Okay. Do you know what conversations, if any, those two have had with Ada about the case?
No,
You're not aware of them?
I'm not aware, and no, I'm not aware.
Okay. Were you given a series of emails and a partial copy of a transcript of an interview that you did to prepare for this hearing today?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall being interviewed by Mr. Whitney and Mr. Robinson back in January of 2011 when Linda Clough was present?
yeah, after reviewing that I do recall.
You remember that interview? Mm-hmm. There was discussion about the case, generally speaking. Is that correct?
Yes,
And at one point, there was discussion of what Ada's observations were. Do you recall telling investigators what Ada had reported to you as far as seeing?
I recall now that I've looked over the transcripts, yes.
And what was that, as you recollect?
I believe I just described how I thought that Ada had seen my mom in the tub, or what Ada had told me.
Just looking at this tub, just for demonstrative purposes, if this sticker here was a faucet, does that help orient you as to the tub in question
Yes.
at the home in Pleasant Grove? Do you remember what you reported to the investigators as to the body position of Michele, according to Ada,
During that interview.
Which one? Which interview?
January 2011, with Linda Clough, Jeff,
Okay.
and Doug?
Thank you.
I believe I reported that that my mother was facing the opposite direction
Opposite from where
from the faucet.
so her head would have been over here?
Yes.
Okay. Were you later asked by investigators to get Ada to diagram what it was that she observed?
I was.
And did in fact Ada diagram on her own the body position?
She did.
On that exhibit,
I'm sorry, will you tell me what you did to get that diagram? Just walk me through how that, what did you do to help the child know what it was you wanted and how the diagram was produced? Help me understand that.
Okay. I believe I was emailed a form to print out where Ada put her name and we put the date that it happened. I drew a picture of the tub, and then Ada drew how my mom was laying in the tub. I just asked her, draw how you found mom in the tub.
How long did that take?
How long, the whole,
from the beginning of sitting down with the child to the time that the drawing was produced and back in your hands?
And some other details. I'm guessing 5 to 10 minutes was a short amount of time.
What questions did you ask to the child during that time?
I don't quite remember specifics on that, but as she was drawing the picture of how my mom was laying, she was saying other things.
Like what?
Like the water was halfway full, the water was red. I believe she said her eyes were open. And she said a few things that I jotted down on the diagram.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
And retrieve Defense Exhibit O. I'm handing you what's been marked as, Defense Exhibit N. Do you recognize what that is?
I do.
And what is that?
It's the depiction of how Ada found my mother on April 11th.
Is this the diagram that Judge Pullen was just asking you about, the process of how it came about?
Yes,
And the notations, the words around it, are those yours?
those I did write those, but those were not my words. Those were the words that Ada told me.
Okay. What did Ada actually do on this diagram as far as what did she draw?
She drew my mother, just my mother, all of that. I only drew the tub, and then I wrote those
Did you draw
captions.
What this appears to be a faucet?
Yeah, I drew the faucet, and I explained to her the orientation of the tub. I'm not an artist, as you can see, but I did tell her that this is the faucet end of the tub, so she understood. She understood the layout there.
Did she write her name here?
She did.
Alexis, did you, and this is, I'm just going to ask a few more pointed questions if Your Honor will allow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you ever prepare Ada for what she told you or what she exhibited on the diagram?
Prepare? No. Are you meaning?
Or coach
tell-
her?
No, I never did.
Another word might be suggest to her what she should do.
No,
Or
I
what?
just said, draw what you remember.
Okay. Were you present on April 11th, 2007 for what Ada observed and experienced in finding your mother?
No, I was not.
Was Rachel?
No, she was
Present.
not.
Was any other person present that you're aware of that has spent any considerable time with Ada over these years?
Over these last years.
Yes.
No, no.
Since the time of...
No, the only other person was my father there.
Okay. Your Honor, I'll pass the witness for now.
Thank you. You may cross.
Good morning. You recall testifying at the preliminary hearing in this case?
I do.
At the preliminary hearing, you indicated that you hadn't had any discussions with Ada about the circumstances of April 11th, 2007 prior to the CJC interview on September 9th of 2008, correct?
I'd have to see that.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Randy, can we get what page that is?
Yeah, 830, 830, 831.
Which volume?
3.
What I said here is I don't remember any specific conversations.
What page was that again? I'm sorry.
8:30 and 8:31.
Thank you.
Today, do you remember speaking with Ada prior to September 9th, 2008 about what she saw on April 11th, 2007?
Prior to September 9th, 2008. Not specifically off the top of my head, but my mom, Ada had brought up my mom's death.
Do you recall anything that Ada said prior to September 9th, 2008?
Not off the top of my head right this second. Any specifics or?
I'm just wanting to know what you remember, is all. And so after September, well, on September 9th, 2008, you were present at the Children's Justice Center, right?
No, and you just said September 2009, didn't you?
September 9, 2000.
Okay, 2008. I was present there.
And you were able to watch the interview from behind a two-way mirror?
No, I was not. We were in a separate room. I wasn't able to watch or listen to the interview at all.
And you subsequently received a transcript of the interview and were able to review it. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe
We did?
I ever received a transcript.
Okay, so you've never reviewed that interview.
I don't believe having ever reviewed the interview at all.
After the interview, as I understand your testimony today, you've had various conversations with Ada about what she observed on April 11th, 2007?
I have, yeah.
And you've reported a number of those conversations to the investigators in this case?
I was asked a few questions to follow up with Ada, and so I did.
When's the first time you remember being asked a question to follow up with Ada?
I don't remember. I mean, it was years and years ago.
I understand.
Yeah.
Was it shortly after the Children's Justice Center interview?
I don't remember if it was shortly after at all. I know there was some email correspondence that we had back and forth, so that might refresh my memory a little bit more.
May I retrieve Exhibit I?
Which one?
Exhibit I.
And could you put that back in order there? What is it? N?
N.
Okay. X and L are out of order because they related to other emails, so.
Review Exhibit I, please. And in this email, you say, "Hi, Doug, I talked to Ada several times, and this is the story she kept giving me." And then you relate the story, correct?
Correct.
And was this in response to one of those questions for you to follow up?
I don't remember specifically. I'd have to see an email from Doug or something like that. I don't remember specifically.
Is it accurate, what you say in the first sentence, that you talked to Ada several times, and this is the story she kept giving you? Is that a accurate account of of what occurred in February 2009?
Yes.
And if you turn to Exhibit J, after February 26th of 2009, is it fair to say you continued to have conversations with Ada about what she saw?
Maybe from time to time, but I don't remember asking her any specifics. It wasn't something we talked about very often.
In Exhibit J, this is a partial transcript of an interview that you had with Doug Whitney, Jeff Robinson, and Linda Clough was also present. Is that correct? You recall that interview?
Yeah, very vaguely. I know I just finished a 30-hour shift at work. But yeah, I recall after reading the transcript.
What number was that again? I'm sorry, exhibit what?
Jay.
J.
J? Okay.
And prior to this interview, you also, in September of 2009, had sat in or been interviewed together with your sister Rachel, correct?
I'd have to see that interview to confirm those dates.
Does that sound right to you?
It could be a possibility.
You indicated in response to Mr. Grunander's questions that you've been very involved in the course of the investigation, correct?
That's correct.
And you've had numerous discussions with both Mr. Whitney and Mr. Robinson about the case, correct?
That's correct.
And they've shared with you along the way their various investigative theories and changes of the theories, correct?
Yeah, they've shared different things over the course of several years.
They've shared with you investigative summaries, had you read and correct some of those, correct?
I don't recall a specific investigative summary, but
You don't recall receiving an investigative summary and reading it and telling
well,
them?
I don't know if that's what it was called. I don't know the legal terms behind it, but
Okay.
but I have received documents and things from them over time to review.
No intention to imply a legal term. You've received summaries of their investigation.
I've
Correct.
received, I believe, some of them. I don't think I've received everything, definitely.
And you've read those summaries and responded with your own comments, things that they got right, things that they got wrong.
Yes.
In this interview on January 5th of 2011, there was a discussion about how your mother was found in the bathtub, correct?
There was.
And on page 2, beginning on line 37, you said, yeah, her head is down by the faucet, correct?
That's what I said.
And that is in relation to what your dad told you, correct?
Let me just read here for a minute. Yes, that's correct.
And then line 41, you say, and feet in the back, right?
That's what I said here.
And that was again in relation to what your dad had told you.
Yeah, the feet going towards the back, yeah.
And then in line 43, you said, and that's completely, she was found completely the other way, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you said that based upon information you had received from Ada, correct?
That's correct. I believe I misspoke here.
On page 3, line 50, you say, her legs were by the faucet. So my dad had flipped her this way. Ada found her that way. That's what you said, right?
That's correct.
And then Jeff Robinson said that that was his understanding too, right? Next line, line 51.
Okay, I'm just looking at to see what the J, that stands for Jeff Robinson. Okay,
Is that right?
that's correct. That's what was written here.
And then line 52, Doug says, that's not my understanding, right?
That's what he says. Uh-huh.
And then line 54, Doug says that the Daniels said that her head was down by the faucet. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in line 57, you said, but Ada saw her before the Daniels. Right?
Yeah, I said it, and so that's what but Ada saw her before the Daniels, yep.
Then line 59, you said, that could have given time if my dad flipped her forward. I don't know what he would have done, but.
Mm-hmm.
Then line 66, Doug asked you specifically, so Ada said her head was not by the faucet? And you answered, yeah, she said that her head was back where it normally would be when she's taking a bath, and she was laying head up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you said, right?
That's what I said. Mm-hmm.
Then in line 70, you said, my dad says she was laying head down, her head at the faucet with her feet sticking out the back. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And turning over to page 31, line 658, Doug asked you, did Ada ever tell you how close she got to the tub? And you answered, no, I never asked her that actually.
Yeah, I think, this had been years after I'd talked with her, and I think that just slipped my mind, that specific question.
So you had asked her other things, but you hadn't asked her about how close she got to the tub.
No, that's not what I said.
Well, I'm not asking what you said, I'm just asking you what occurred. You told Jeff and Doug that you hadn't asked her how close she got to the tub.
I believe I had asked her, and like I said, I think I misspoke. This interview was after a 30-hour shift, and I was pretty tired.
Line 660, Doug asked, I'd be interested in knowing, did she actually walk over in order for her to see those bottoms on? She would have had to have walked over close enough to see basically the whole body.
In line which?
Line 660,
Okay.
661, and 662.
Okay.
Then line 664, you say, yeah. Correct?
I did say yeah. Uh-huh.
So you understood their concern that in order for her to allegedly see bottom, she would have had to walk over close to the tub, right?
I believe I did understand that.
Then in 667, Doug asked you again, can you ask her about that?
Uh-huh. And yeah.
And then following this interview, Jeff Robinson sent you a number of emails in January, February, and March of 2011 asking you to talk to Ada about various facts, right?
I'd have to look at those dates of the emails, but I did receive some correspondence from Jeff.
And as a result of his correspondence, you followed through and asked Ada about the things he inquired.
He wanted me to have her draw a diagram so they could be really sure because I had some confusion about what had happened, and I hadn't asked her all, a lot of specific questions.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect.
Alexis, do you recall, as you sit here today, you indicated that you had worked a long shift prior to this interview that we've been talking about with Mr. Robinson and Mr. Whitney?
Yeah.
As you sit here today, do you recall Ada describing your mom's position in the tub prior to the diagram that she did?
Yes.
And how did she describe that to you?
She described her as finding her laying on her back in the tub, her eyes being opened, and her head underneath the side and the faucet side. So
your testimony today is that you would have been mistaken in reporting the reverse as far as the body position?
Yes.
Okay. Has your understanding with respect to the body position as Ada observed it, has it changed over time, or has it been consistent from the beginning when you first found out?
No, I mean, it's what Ada said happened, and it's what Ada saw. I wasn't there, but Ada saw it.
Okay. I have nothing further, Judge.
May I have those
Yes.
documents,
They're
please?
still in order.
Okay.
I have no additional questions.
I'd like you to look at Defendant's Exhibit U. This is an email, it looks like from you to Jeff Robinson on March 30th, 2011. It says, I talked to Ada and she told me a few other things about the morning my mother died. Can you just review that? Can you tell me how you came to acquire this information from Ada?
I just asked her, I think more in depth than I had before, of what happened, the day of my mom's death.
What do you mean by in-depth?
Well, just asking, who picked you up from school, things like that. And then she started telling a little more detail than she had had in the past.
And did you continue to ask her questions then as she began to talk?
Just a couple more, but that day she was just giving, a little more detail than she'd had in the past. But I'd asked, what happened when you got home? Where did you go? And, she spoke of going, into the bathroom, and did you see Mom right away? And she mentioned that she, looked over into the tub and saw her, and just those things that I'd mentioned there.
How long did that interview with her take?
I don't remember specifically how long, but I'm guessing maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most.
Was anyone else there?
Can you tell me the date again on
It's
that?
March 30th of 2011.
I don't specifically remember anyone else being there.
Were you living in Nevada at that time or up?
No, I was living in South Jordan at that time.
Did you engage in this questioning of the child at the request of Mr. Robinson?
No, I'd have to look at his email, but I know that I was emailed to follow up on a few things, ask a few questions, and so I just did what I was told, basically.
Right. Do you have follow-up questions from the defense?
No.
Okay.
Actually, let me just, I don't know if I covered this, guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you asked by Jeff Robinson to follow up on certain questions,
Uh-huh.
as I asked this question, I think I already asked it, but did they ever indicate to you what specific answers they were looking for?
Oh,
As
no.
far as the facts?
No, they didn't.
That's all I have, Judge.
Okay.
Anything further from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Summers, thank you. You may step down. You'll remain under trial subpoena, but you can step down today. Anything further from the state?
That's the foundational testimony we are presenting, Judge.
Will you approach the bench, please? defense mark its expert's affidavit as defendant's why. I'll receive it on the issue of foundation. We'll be in recess to get the jury ready to go. Let's take about 10 minutes.
All rise.